Good afternoon. Thank you. I'm Avery Bourne. I represent the 95th Legislative District, and I am from Morrisonville. The 95th District encompasses all or parts of Christian, Montgomery, Macoupin, and Madison counties. For the last year, FOID and concealed carry issues and delays have been the top issue we have heard from constituents, eclipsed only by unemployment issues. My constituents fear that they are falling out of compliance with the law because they cannot either apply or renew their FOID card in time, and they have done everything within their power to do it. We hear daily from frustrated constituents for whom this is the case. Our caucus held a very similar press conference 280 days ago, calling for action on these FOID and concealed carry delays, presenting our legislative fixes, highlighting constituents who at the time had experienced 3 to 4 month delays. Since then, we are seeing even longer delays. We are hearing from constituents still on a daily basis. And all we've seen are executive orders that provide some relief for renewals, but no real solutions, particularly for people who are initially applying for their FOID or concealed carry. And additionally, we hear regularly from gun dealers who are really wary about these provisionally valid FOIDs and what that does for the certainty for their own business in selling guns and ammunition to these people who have provisionally valid FOIDs. Rather than the governor choosing a collaborative legislative fix for these issues, he has again chosen to go it alone, and it has not gone well. Here's a few examples of the hundreds of constituents our office has heard from in the last year who have experienced either FOID or concealed carry delays. Billy filed for his FOID renewal 8 months ago and is still waiting. Doyle applied for a FOID card, initial FOID card on May 30th, still has not received a card. Tyler applied for his FOID card last December, a full year ago, still hasn't heard an update. And Cheryl, another constituent who applied for her FOID card 9 months ago, still waiting for her renewal. There is no way around it. These people are experiencing lengthy and unreasonable delays, which is an infringement on their constitutional rights. These original issuances particularly are troublesome during these delays and these executive orders where they get no solutions. We are here again as our caucus outlining our legislative solutions, highlighting what a problem this is. There is absolutely no excuse for these delays and no room for error and delays for a fundamental constitutional right like the right to keep and bear arms. There has to be a legislative fix. We are here recommitting that we are willing to work with whoever, whenever to get this done. The issues have gone on long enough. It is time for action and leadership from the Pritzker administration and the Democrats who control the General Assembly. We have to get this fixed for our constituents. With that, I will turn it over to my colleague, C.D. Davidsmeyer.
I'm State Representative C.D. Davidsmeyer. I represent the 100th District, which is all or part of 9 counties. If you're on the Zoom, you can tell by the look on my face that it's hunting season. One of the major issues, and Leader Bourne hit on it briefly, my constituents are going in during hunting season, trying to purchase ammunition or even a new gun to go hunting, and they can't do it because their FOID is expired. And even though the state police have said, we are going to extend this, the retailers are so concerned about the liability they may have if they do sell to the wrong person that they will not sell to anybody. And it's an understandable position to be in as a retailer. Now, on the other side, if my father-in-law from Ohio comes to visit to go hunting, he can go in and buy ammunition without a FOID card. All he has to do is show that he's not from Illinois. So we are second-class citizens in our own state. Now, the delays in the FOID system. I will say the people working at FOID are working their tails off trying to get all these things done, and they're doing a great job. They just don't have the leadership to fix a broken system. It takes a legislative fix, and we have to come together because this is an infringement on people's rights. Right now, they are at least twice the allowable time to go through and process a FOID card, at least twice the amount of time. Then if you have a problem with your FOID and you have an appeal, there's zero timeline. They could set that on a desk and let it sit there for years. There's no rule. We have to fix that. You know, if the state of Illinois expects the people of the state of Illinois to follow the rules, the least we should expect is for the state police to do the same. There are rules set within this, within the FOID system of how long they have to process these, and they're certainly not following. So I would say we need to suspend the FOID system until they can get it under control and stop violating people's Second Amendment rights. And with that, I want to turn it over to my colleague, Representative Marin.
Thank you, Representative Davidsmeyer. I am Mike Marin. I represent the 104th District, which is parts of Vermilion and Champaign counties. Over the last year, we've received hundreds of constituent complaints on the FOID card renewal process in my office. That's been a steady increase of constituents experiencing approval delays, leading to very, very frustrated people. You know, people that they try to call and talk to a live person and they're unable to do so. People that have become exhausted trying to get a hold of somebody to get this problem resolved and get their renewals expedited. And this has been a problem for a long, long time. Prior to COVID, as Representative Bourne stated, you know, we brought these issues to light back, I believe it was the 1st of March, before the General Assembly was shut down. You know, the Democrats have blamed the system failure on users and alleged that there's not enough money to service the 2 million FOID card holders. But we found out earlier this year that over $28 million has been swept out of the fund that is dedicated to administer the program. They transferred that money out of the fund, administer FOID, and into the general revenue fund to fund social programs. And then they blame the dysfunction on the users. What was the grand solution to this? It was to propose Senate Bill 1966 that hiked FOID card fees and limited the expiration date and added extra barriers to law-abiding citizens. This is another prime example of deceitful practices that happen all the time in Springfield, and enough is enough. This is the very opposite of transparency. Law-abiding gun owners should not have to endure ridiculously long periods of time to get their FOID cards renewed. The FOID card is currently being challenged in court, and I am a co-sponsor on legislation that would eliminate the FOID card altogether. It's been over a year since we first raised this pressing issue, and we still do not have an answer on why this program is consistently being used as a piggy bank to fund other programs, or where all the money collected from law-abiding FOID card owners has gone to. My legislative assistant was talking this morning to a lady who applied for her renewal back in November of 2019. So we're well over a year where she still hasn't heard back on her renewal. And, you know, I hate to say this, but I believe that this problem is becoming systemic. We're seeing not only problems like this with the FOID cards, but there's been the disaster at the Illinois Department of Employment Security. There's been issues that we've had to deal with in this office on license renewals from the Secretary of State's office. I think that this has just become a trademark of state agencies under Governor Pritzker, and there needs to be some accountability for that. And we need to try to get together and come up with solutions to fix this dysfunction. And so I would call on the governor and the speaker to call the General Assembly back into session and let us try to work these problems out and get some solutions to the hardworking taxpayers of our districts and let their voice be heard. And I think our legislation, our proposed fixes, I think we are owed a hearing on the floor of the General Assembly for what our proposals are. This program has not been utilized and administered fairly for the law-abiding gun owners of the state. and it's done nothing to curb gun violence in Illinois since its creation back in the 1960s. It's time for the majority to stop using hateful rhetoric and trying to increase restrictions to people's constitutional rights. We need to clean up this program and get it working. I will be joining members of the House Republican Caucus to actively fight off any attacks on our Second Amendment rights and to be a vocal crusader in ensuring we protect our Constitution to the fullest. I would like to turn it over to my friend and colleague, Representative Patrick Windhorst.
Thank you, Representative Marin. I'm Patrick Windhorst, State Representative in the 118th District. I represent all or parts of the southernmost 11 counties in Illinois. Since taking office, I've stood strong in my support for our Second Amendment rights. One of the ways that I've advocated for our Second Amendment rights is a legislative agenda I introduced at the start of the 101st General Assembly. The legislative package is made up of 9 bills designed to protect the rights of Illinoisans to exercise their Second Amendment rights. Illinois is one of only 4 states that still requires the firearm owner's identification card, or FOID card. There are serious questions as to whether the FOID card is constitutional, and that issue is pending in the court system. Prior to that ruling, however, there are steps we can take as a legislature to protect the constitutionally guaranteed rights of law-abiding Illinoisans. At the beginning of 2019, I introduced HB 913, a bill that would repeal Illinois' FOID card requirement. My preference would be for the state of Illinois to join those other 46 states in removing the requirement of the FOID card. But given the makeup of the General Assembly, that may not be possible at this time. So as I continue to push for repeal, I believe we can pass common sense legislation to ease the burden on law-abiding gun owners. These bills are designed to address the complaints about delays in the FOID card, concealed carry license, and firearm transfer system. And here are just a few examples of those bills. HB 4392 would eliminate the 72-hour waiting period for individuals that have been granted a valid concealed carry license. HB 4447 would extend the time a renewal application would be accepted by the Illinois State Police to 180 days before the expiration of the applicant's FOID card or concealed carry license. HB 4448 would require the Illinois State Police to automatically renew any concealed carry license holder's FOID card as long as their concealed carry license is in good standing until the time that the concealed carry license expires. And HB 4450, which spells out the process by which any appeal of a denial of FOID card or concealed carry license must be handled, and provides specific guidelines for the state police in regard to the time it takes to process such appeals. These bills are designed to improve the system. The Illinois State Police has expressed a willingness to work with the legislature on potential improvements to the FOID and concealed carry license systems. Now it's up to us as a General Assembly to get back to work and protect the rights of Illinoisans. I'll now turn it back to Eleni to open it up for questions.
Thank you all. We have a couple questions that have come in. So to begin here, Dave Dahl from WTAX, people have been complaining about this for years, haven't they? What is new now?
I was just going to say, this is CD, Davidsmeyer. I don't think there's anything new other than it just keeps getting worse and worse. And eventually, COVID can't be, the answer or the scapegoat for everything. I understand that it's extended time, but we weren't even hitting the mark before COVID started. And it's getting worse and worse. And there's a million things that you can blame it on. I know that the governor likes to blame things on the federal government right now, but I don't believe that that's I don't think that that's one of the things you can blame it on. That I don't think the federal government's getting involved in something like this, background checks, whatever it may be. So you can still get, if you're purchasing a gun, you can still get a gun within 3 days with a federal background check. So there's a number of things that that you may see come down on the blame game, but it still relies on us blaming the system. It's a broken system. We have to fix it.
From Greg Bishop at the Center Square, state police have said they're hiring more people to process applications, but it takes months to train. With patients wearing thin for those needing certainty on their rights, when will lawmakers join in legal action against the FOID system?
Well, there are currently, this Patrick Windhorst in the 118th district, there are currently, to my knowledge, several lawsuits challenging certain aspects of the FOID card system, including some legal action relating to the delays in the processing of FOID card applications. I don't know that a legislature joining those lawsuits is going to cause them to speed up or be heard any quicker. I think it's these lawsuits are being brought, and it's just a matter of them being heard and decided.
You know, it's kind of unfortunate that we would have to consider joining legal action. I mean, certainly, I hope that those court cases are decided favorably and that the FOID card system is ruled unconstitutional. But, you know, my colleague presented a lot of fixes, a lot of solutions. Why can't we have a hearing on some proposed legislative ideas? I mean, why is this being bottled up by the majority party? Get us back to Springfield and let us work on solutions to this.
Similar to many questions that have been asked about the governor's executive orders and legal action, it is a shame that Illinois citizens are having to go through the legal process to ensure their rights. We have three branches of government. There are three ways that this can be resolved. The executive branch, Governor Pritzker, can fix this. The legislature can convene and take up these legislative solutions and fix this. Bills that we are all co-sponsors on, and we are pushing for that legislative solution. To force this to the legal realm, that people have to pay attorneys to challenge this to enforce their rights, is just ridiculous. And I think that's why we're calling for action from the legislature. We can do this. Let us do our jobs. Let us fix it. Or Governor Pritzker, you fix it. But let us do it so that citizens don't have to sue their own government to practice their constitutional right.
Thank you. From WAND TV, the federal government is reporting a record number of background checks. Do some of the delays fall on the federal government?
Irregardless of the situation with the federal government, there's a complete lack of seriousness of administering the program here in Illinois. I mean, the majority swept over $28 million out of the fund that administers the program. So, I mean, we can point fingers somewhere else, but that's counterproductive. We need to look at what's causing the problems, what we're doing to cause the problems. And certainly sweeping that fund is definitely not being transparent with the public as to what their fees are being used for. But it's also a lack of seriousness. It exhibits an extreme lack of seriousness about administering the program in a proper way.
Do any of you know of any Democrats that have constituents that are experiencing these same kinds of problems?
I live in a legislative district that's represented by a Republican in the House and a Democrat in the Senate. So I know for certainty that at least in my half of the Senate district, there are hundreds and hundreds of constituents who have contacted my office. And it's just not the case that there are only law-abiding gun owners who live in Republican districts. This is a statewide issue. Every elected official in Illinois has constituents who are dealing with this.
And this is State Representative Patrick Windhorst. Prior to the pandemic, there were discussions I had with members on the other side of the aisle representing all areas of the state. And they said that in their offices, one of the top calls, if not the top call, involved the FOID card and concealed carry system in all areas of the state. So this is not a problem that's just seen in rural areas or downstate. This is a statewide issue.
Okay. Another question. Sorry, a bunch coming in at the same time now. Why do you think the legislation you have filed hasn't received a legislative hearing?
Well, part of it is the COVID issue we had this past year, that we had a very shortened legislative session, but it's also the fact that there is just a difference of opinion about Second Amendment rights, unfortunately. But individuals on this call and in our caucus are strong supporters of the Second Amendment and individual Second Amendment rights. And we believe that the Second Amendment is a constitutional right, just like any other right that needs to be protected, and the legislature needs to act to make sure those rights are protected.
I would say that, when you're answering the question of why particular legislation hasn't been given the time of day, I think that question needs to be addressed to Speaker Madigan. I mean, basically, there's a lot of legislation out there that would help the state and be favorable and improve things. But there's one man in charge of what gets called, what gets its day, what gets its hearing on the floor of the General Assembly. So it's really unfortunate that that's the circumstances that we operate under in Springfield. But, one person can hold a lot of good stuff up.
Really quick, I just want to say the Second Amendment is a lot like the First Amendment, right? Just because we don't like somebody else's opinion doesn't mean they don't have the right to it. So just because you don't want to have a gun doesn't mean that somebody else who is a legal, safe gun owner shouldn't have that right to it. And that's where the difference of opinion is. You've got one side that wants to pretend like that right doesn't exist. And then you've got our side who wants to fight for it to ensure that we protect those freedoms. You're on.
Thanks. A follow-up question from Center Square regarding the legislation. Which committee would handle this? And has anyone made a request for a hearing?
I believe this legislation has all been assigned to the Judiciary Criminal Committee, which I'm a member of. The only firearm or FOID card related bill that was called this General Assembly related to SB 1966 or the FOID fingerprinting bill. The other piece of legislation that I put forward and others have put forward on resolving this issue have not been called or received a hearing.
Great. A question from Ben Garbarek at the Illinois. My question is, why aren't the assurances from the Illinois State Police enough to convince gun store owners to sell to people with FOID cards that have been temporarily extended during the pandemic?
I would say the only thing that I've really seen from the state police is the receipt that says you paid to renew your FOID card. Now that's for a person that's renewed. What about someone who has never had a FOID card? Right? If you've never had a FOID card, there's nothing they can base your purchase on, nothing whatsoever. Or even your ownership of legal ownership of a gun. If a family member passed away and left you their guns, there's a million reasons, and Illinois is one of the most litigious states in the nation. Why would a retailer want to take the risk of being held liable for a bad actor when that's what the state of Illinois is specifically supposed to be doing through this program? And if they can't do it through this program, then we need to get rid of it.
And then one last question off topic from Dave Dahl at WTAX. How is the statewide GOP going to get good candidates in 2022, and what kind of support will they get?
I think that any Republican in Illinois should look at this last election cycle and realize that there are good prospects for Republicans in Illinois. We picked up seats in the Illinois House. We helped defeat the governor's prime election promise of the graduated income tax, another tax increase on small businesses. I think people in Illinois are fed up. They see this corruption investigation with Madigan and Democrats who've been complicit in it. And I think that Illinois has good prospects. So I don't think there should be any reason to think that there will not be plenty of qualified, good candidates who will step up to the plate and try to make Illinois the state that we all are working for right now.
All right. Well, that was all the questions. Thank you guys all for participating and the media for covering. If you guys have follow-ups, as usual, just please reach out to me directly and we're happy to answer more questions.